Hey everyone, Benji here. Welcome back to Contractor Evolution. Now, as a millennial myself, I take a small amount, not a ton, but a small amount of personal offense whenever I hear frustrated contractors verbally bash my entire generation, or young people, broadly speaking, for their supposed lack of work ethic, for their chronic ADD, for their addiction to their phone, their apparent disinterest in construction and trades. The list goes on. Admittedly, I roll my eyes a little anytime I hear someone throw up their hands in frustration and declare with certainty, these young people, I tell you, no one wants to work these days. If you listen to the podcast at all, you know this is a recurring theme for us on the show. But having said all that, I also deeply empathize with the business owner whose phone is ringing off the hook, whose production calendar is stacked, and who sees the opportunity in front of them if only they could hire a few more people. And this is why I'm beyond excited to have Jody Underhill, the founder of Rapidhire, as our guest on the show today. Now, just as an aside, guys, I've been looking for a digital marketer turned recruiter to guest on the show since we launched last year. Someone who specializes in social media employment ads and automated hiring funnels. And when I met Jody through our friend Tommy Mello, I knew right away we had to get him on. Now, before founding Rapidhire, Jody enjoyed a long and successful career as a marketer. He collaborated with people like Roland Frazier, Russell Brunson, Ryan Dice, Frank Kern. And I hate to name drop, but if you know anything about digital marketing, that's pretty good company to keep. And if you don't know anything about digital marketing, just take my word for it. This guy really knows his stuff. Now, what Rapidhire does is they build extremely high conversion hiring funnels specifically for contractors and home service companies by running targeted employment ads on Facebook and Instagram, and then pushing applicants to custom-built application pages. They completely bypass the traditional job boards, which I think most business owners feel are providing diminishing returns anyway. I can honestly say, guys, that I think this strategy will be commonplace. This will be industry standard in 5 to 10 years, maybe sooner. Jody's just cracked the code a lot sooner than everyone else. Some of the highlights from this conversation for me were when we talked about the formula for a great employment ad and what's working in 2022, from imagery to copywriting to graphic design, and even how and when to use emojis, which he says boosts conversion in a pretty significant way. He walks us through how they design application pages to sell the culture and potentially make uploading resumes a thing of the past. Really interesting, really progressive, totally new idea. Stay tuned for that. Lastly, we talk about all the ways an automated nurture sequence can reduce friction for the applicant and give you more applicants than you need. So if you're sick and tired of posting on Indeed, ZipRecruiter, Monster, Craigslist, the list goes on with limited results, this episode is must-listen content. And by the way, Jody has provided visual examples of his ads, his application pages, and just an overall summary of the strategy we discussed in today's episode. And you can download that using the link in the description. Okay, let's dive in with Jody Underhill.
You're watching Contractor Evolution, where we unpack the systems, tactics, and skills you need to take your fast-growing contracting business to the next level.
You're here to learn what it takes to scale up, work less, and increase profitability. You've come to the right place.
Stay tuned to learn what separates the new breed of contractor from the old school, and welcome to your ultimate guide on the business of contracting.
Jody, thanks for being here, man. I'm really excited to have you.
Thanks, Benji. It's my pleasure to be here. Looking forward to it.
We got together on a really, really great roundtable with Tommy Mello a few months back, and when I left, I was like, I got to get this guy on the show because I just want to go deeper into sort of a social media recruiting strategy that I feel, as much as anyone in this space, you are truly a subject matter expert on. And we've touched on this in other episodes. Just for listeners, if you want to just kind of get like a baseline understanding of like a good, solid recruiting funnel, you can check out our Ultimate Hiring Funnel series. If you just scroll down in Contractor Evolution, you'll find it. This episode is going to be quite deep on we're going somewhat down a technical rabbit hole on what a good social media ads strategy looks like, and then a few of the steps that follow. So, Jody, I'll start with an easy one. What about, I understand like you were you're actually new to recruiting. You have a long career as a marketer before this. What about your background as a marketer do you think lends itself now to recruiting? And then could you just speak more broadly about the parallels between these two crafts?
Sure. So like I said, in marketing, it's all about, getting your message in front of the right person, getting your message in front of the right person to become a customer. And because it used to be that you didn't really have to worry about that whenever it came to recruiting, because there were old tried and true channels. And the issue is some of those tried and true channels are kind of drying up. And there's a new, the platforms that are out there now, most people are not utilizing because it seems to be a little bit tough in order to maybe get through them. But where the similarities come in, it's advertising for customers is very similar to advertising for employees. And that's what most people don't do. So the parallel is you have to build a compelling offer for someone to put their information in to become a lead, to become a customer. You got to do the same thing whenever it comes to candidates these days, because most people that are basically worth their salt are usually already working for somewhere or have choices of where they want to go today. That's one of the things that's making it harder and harder for people to find quality applicants, is because they're using the same old methods where whenever you're marketing for employees or for candidates, you're building a reason and you're building up a story for why they should come and work for you. So just like you have to have a story to get a customer, you have to have a story in order to be able to show what's in it for them, what's in it for the candidate, and why they should apply with you. So those parallels are there, and you have to nurture them every step of the way.
They are extremely similar. I'd even make the case that it's almost identical, the steps in the process. One starts with an ideal client profile where you understand the customers you like to work with. One starts with a ideal candidate profile, which is like, hey, this is my dream candidate. This is who I'd love to have fill this role. And you follow the steps all the way through. In one instance, you end up with a new customer that you onboard and produce work for, and hopefully go back in the future. And in the other, you end up with a new employee that you're onboarding. So they're the structure of these two sort of flow through processes are very, very, very similar. And the talent market functions like any other market. There are times when it gets more competitive, a little bit tighter. And I think that we're in one of those times right now. And you could make the case that we've maybe been here for a couple of years. I always love to just get people's perspective on this, Jody. Like, are there factors, external factors, market factors, the influence of technology, social media, even politics, certainly COVID to some extent? What's going on right now that's making hiring, team building a lot harder for entrepreneurs than it used to?
Sure. So there is, all of those things are definitely factors, as they are factors in everything every day in our life. One of the things that is affecting it now is we do have an aging workforce on one hand. There are people that are leaving the workforce, and therefore we're having to bring in younger talent. And so the pool of experienced labor, experienced technicians, experienced installers that are out there in the hiring pool has become smaller as a result. So there are more people entering, the new one entering in don't have the experience. The other thing, we mentioned COVID, is people have gotten very used to doing things virtually, right? So being able to recruit virtually, being able to interview virtually is one of those things that comes into play. And companies that don't adopt it are going to struggle. The other part of it is with not adopting the technology as far as like doing virtual interviews, is that they would expect people to come to them to interview. Well, if they're good, they're already working for somebody. Right. So you got to make it more available to them. But the biggest thing is aging workforce, more people looking for work done in their home because of COVID. They stayed there all the whole time. So there's more work out there, and the workforce that are needing to be trained. So you have to really get your message put into a concise manner that's going to attract someone to leave where they're at and come work for you.
The aging workforce thing is an interesting one. I might jumble my numbers here, but I put together a presentation on this. And just going off of memory, it was a U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics number. And it was basically, so from 2014 to 2021 was the time frame I examined. And off the top of my head, the average age of a construction worker in 2014 was 40.5 years old. And in 2021, so 7 years later, 42.9, which means the average age has gone up by almost 2.5 years. The median's gone up by 2.5 years in age over the span of a 7-year period, which is a lot. That is not nothing when you're looking at large aggregate statistics like that. And so there's a couple potential takes on this. One is, well, we have a baby boomer generation there's sort of a mass exodus from the workforce as they are retiring out, and demographically speaking, they were a massive generation, as we know. So that's maybe one angle. It's just like this was an inevitable thing that was going to happen. Then there's maybe a more cynical take on it, which is, well, young people have no interest in trades or working with their hands or blue collar businesses or anything like that. Do you have a perspective on that? Like, do young people, like, are they averse to working hard? Do they not want to get into this space, or is that maybe a bit too simplistic?
I mean, there's definitely some of the younger group that is that way. But the biggest thing that they need to be shown, and the things that I don't see happening enough, is showing them that the trades is a career, not just a job. That there is a clear path to get to me. If you ask anybody, no matter what generation they are, the magic number is always, I want to earn 6 figures. If you can show them that they can earn 6 figures, and granted, yeah, there's some of the jobs that are in trades that are hard work, and you got to work outside and it's hot. However, showing some work-life balance and the fact that a clear path to get to 6 figures, you'll get a lot of people's attention, because they don't know, right? Because they're not going on Indeed looking for jobs in the trades. So by getting the information in front of them that, hey, you can be an HVAC technician and with a clear path to 100,000, or you can repair garage doors with a clear path to 6 figures, informing them. They're just ill-informed, right? Because they're not learning about it in school. So it's our job in order to get the information in front of them so they can see the opportunity is even there. That's the biggest reason, because they don't know that is how big the opportunity is for them.
They don't know, and the opportunity is there, and we can say this with some authority. We work with nearly 500 contractors all over North America. I mean, these guys men and women are doing exceptionally well in business. They've got a lifestyle they enjoy. Like, this is a good deal. This is a really good deal for a lot of young people. I don't know why this is lost on them or just not connecting with them. And I totally agree with what you're saying, which is that it's your job to get that messaging out in front of them. They're not being taught it in school. They're not being fed this from their parents in many, many instances. So it's your job as a small business owner to communicate to them. I want to go back to something that you just said a second ago on the sort of the COVID chapter we've just been through and this virtual recruiting thing. Is there has there been a change in expectations and standards that the talent pool has around, like, what's, the funnel that they expect to work through? Is it sort of like a dated ask to be like, hey, come drive over here and show up for an interview in person? Like, have the expectations shifted as a result of the digitization of all of this stuff?
I would say absolutely yes. And the thing is, that doesn't mean that the in-person interview is dead. I mean, you got to, if they're going to be, usually when you're hiring somebody, they're from your local area, so they usually can get there. What I'm saying is the first steps don't have to be in person, right? You can do it through video interview. You can do it through a Zoom interview to begin with, because they can be on the job site. They can go out to their car and hop on a Zoom on their phone till you can actually have a conversation with them to make the determination if it's somebody that you want to have come in after you've seen like their application or a video interview, to be able to make that determination. And then being a little more flexible on when you will interview those people, because again, they're usually working for someone else. So you're going to need to change your schedule to kind of accommodate them. Mm-hmm. And if people are like, they want a job, they need to come here, or they need to do this. The days of getting people to jump through a bunch of hoops to come work for you are that's 5 years ago kind of mentality. You wouldn't make your customers jump through hoops for you to be able to provide service for them. So likewise, you don't want to make your candidates jump through hoops to be able to come work for you.
I love that point you just made. We might use that clip on socials, because it just gets right to the heart of the matter, which is that this philosophy towards hiring, which is that it should be really difficult and they should bend over backwards to show their worth to us, is becoming a dated, an old school, an obsolete approach to this. And it's like that may be right, or your worldview or your perspective on, might be that that's the way it ought to be. But the reality is that tactic is just not working anymore. And business owners need to shift to this change in environment. So I love that piece. I have so many questions I want to ask you about writing good ads, how to build an application page, like nurture sequences, automation. So let's dive into that stuff. But before we get into rabbit holes, just give us like a quick rundown on the Rapidhire Pro strategy, if you will.
Sure. So the job boards are already always out there. They're going to work. Also, referrals are going to work. What we do is we do everything basically through social media, because that's where people are spending their time, about 2.5 hours a day. So we run attention getting ads that stop the scroll to get people to take a minute to look at the position and then click on learn more to be able to put their information in to see more about the position. Once they do that, we're instantly sending them a text message with a picture of the ad and a text message with a call to action to go fill out an application, because it cuts down on who are you, why are you calling me, why are you texting me, and it's instantaneous. The other thing is, in the society today, they're used to virtual, but also used to instant communications and being kept abreast every step of the way. So once we get them into that funnel, we're communicating with them on a daily basis each day to get them to complete the application. Once the application is completed, and it's a form inside of our system that they fill out the blanks, not requiring a resume, they fill that out, then they go do a video interview. It's automated, doesn't take any of your time, it only takes the candidate's time to answer a few questions so you can get a feel if it's somebody you actually want to have an in-person interview with. And then from there, we manage that all the way through that process to then actually scheduling the interview on the client's calendar with the candidate and then nurturing them to show up for the interview. Mm-hmm. And by nurturing, I mean continually sending them reminders with a call to action that gets them to respond yes or respond not just to, hey, here's a reminder, please respond yes if you're going to make it, to get them to engage and interact. That's really the whole key to the process.
These are classic, tried and tested marketing approaches to getting better conversions. Everything that you just said is marketer speak. There's all of the best practices for how to create a funnel that converts there. Nurture reminders, a bunch of automations, text versus email. So the parallels between the two are becoming clearer and clearer. What are some of the implications of going this social media route versus the traditional job boards route, which, as you said, they're always there. Your Indeed, Craigslist, ZipRecruiter, Kijiji here in Canada. There's hundreds of them. Those are always there. What are some of the, let's say, benefits of going the social media route versus that tried and tested path?
Sure. So with the tried and tested path, the only people you're getting is the people who are going to those job boards. The people who are going on Kijiji actively searching, on Craigslist actively searching. Social media, the difference is it's kind of like the difference in pay-per-click, where they have to go search for they're searching for the solution, versus Facebook advertising, where you're putting it in front of them to help make a decision. That's what we're doing with social media, with Facebook and Instagram, putting the ad in front of people who are scrolling, who not necessarily going to the job board. So we're expanding the pool of applicants, of leads, to those people who are on those social media sites. About 2.5 hours a day for both US and Canada every day on social media. And then from there, putting it in front of them so they even know that it's there. Statistics show that 74% of job seekers are passive job seekers, meaning they probably would make a move if they knew about a position, but they're not going to go hunting for it. It has to show up in front of them.
74%, fully, very nearly 3/4 of the population are sort of, they're not actively looking for a job, but they might take one if it was like presented to them in a captivating way, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Wow.
It's a captivating way, positioning some of the benefits of working for you versus possibly where they're currently at. There's a lot of different intangibles other than benefits and pay that can go into how you get their attention.
Yeah. The other thing I wondered if you could comment on is like the crowdedness of a job board. You've got pretty stiff competition on there versus social media, which, trends come and go. Maybe it will get crowded in 5 or 10 years time. Who knows? We'll see. But right now, this is this is newer territory for recruitment for trades is this social media pool we're talking about. Can you maybe comment on the crowded aspect of the job boards?
Sure. So it's like if you've ever seen a pier, whatever, there's 100 people on a pier fishing, and everybody's got the same bait and the same line. It's just a matter of which one is the fish going to come and bite. Basically that's what you're doing on the job boards. And there's nothing wrong with that. People catch fish off the pier every day, but whenever there's 100 people fishing for the same fish, the likelihood goes way down. The difference is with using social media is you're basically fishing in a stocked pond without anybody else fishing in that pond.
Right.
Increases your chances greatly of getting the right candidates or the right leads coming in. And it's a lot of times our clients basically give information or kind of describe our service better than we do. So Miles Sidorak, he's with Naiad Irrigation up in Calgary. He said, when I'm on Indeed or Kijiji, it's like I'm at a job fair where there's a bunch of other companies doing the same thing and we're all competing for the same people. Now with running ads on Facebook, it's like being at a job fair where you're the only booth. Mm-hmm. So basically everybody only sees you as the opportunity. They're not comparing you to 6 other people. So it gives you an unfair advantage in the fact that there's hardly anybody else there. And the reason is because it's not easy. It's easy to post on Indeed. On Facebook and Instagram, you have to meet their terms of service for the fact that it's a special ad category of employment. And they're very strict so that you can't do anything that's misleading. Everything has to be exactly right in order for the ad to even get approved.
Right.
Therefore, there's very little competition because most people can't do it. It's hard. Ads get rejected. They get disheartened and they quit.
So couple big salient points here I want listeners to remember. Going social media, you are getting in front of passive job seekers, that other 75% of the market who isn't actively pursuing a new job or career right now. It's less crowded because there's fewer people advertising job. There's fewer employment ads on there. And it's an ever expanding pool with new users and growing reach every day, every month. So I want to sort of move this along and get into the way that we talked offline a little bit, Jody, the way that we've kind of organized this. And you guys, Rapidhire does a lot more than just these 3 things, but I think for the sake of this episode, the easiest way to organize our thinking and really deliver some value is to talk about 3 really chunky parts of the process. One is this, you said you called it an attention grabbing ad. The other is the application page in and of itself. So where that ad pushes the candidate to. And then the third thing is using automations and like a nurture sequence to keep people in the flow and convert at a higher rate. So, and by the way, guys, Jody is graciously provided an overview. So we're talking about this verbally. We're going to explain all this as articulately as we can. If you're a visual learner, if you want to actually see this stuff in action, you want to see some examples of really high converting ads, you want to see what the landing page looks like, you can click the link in the description of this episode and download that. Thanks to Jody. It's just a really easy sort of few pages on slides that will help sink in some of the learning here. Let's talk about these attention grabbing ads, Jody.
Sure.
How do you go about designing these things? Just kind of take us through the look and feel and how you make them.
Right. So the first thing you want to do is what everybody's looking for gets their attention is what the job is. You want to make sure that you use people with logoed shirts on actually doing the job that you're advertising for. Do not use stock images. Everybody knows the guy with the blue overalls and the blue hat is a stock image from iStock Photo or from Adobe Stock. And that's not really someone that's working for you, because having people with logoed shirts on doing the work shows, number one, it also exposes, it helps your branding, but also basically they see that. And then your wrapped vehicles. Putting those in the ads lends lends a lot of credibility to the whole equation, because they see, hey, it's a real company, that it's not just somebody throwing a stock image up there trying to just grab someone's information. It's a real company. It has branding. You're making sure that you use your colors of your same colors on your website in your ads. Everyone is always looking for something to be a scam. So if they look at your ad and then go look at your Facebook page or go look at your website, you want to make sure that your branding is consistent, that you're using the same hex code colors, and then putting the benefits of working for you on that graphic as much as possible without completely overloading it with text.
Is that a real concern for a lot of these potential candidates? Is that it's a scam, or this is a fake company, or there's something nefarious going on? Is that I wouldn't have thought of that. That's a real concern for people.
Yeah, because we get comments of some every now and then we have a client that doesn't have images, and so we have to use a stock image, and we consistently on those we get it. Is this a real company? Is this just somebody fishing for my contact information? So I mean that's why we know to do it, because of getting those comments on the job ads. It's amazing. People leaving comments can lead you in a lot of different directions as far as improving what you're doing. But by having those colors and hex codes, first of all, the companies we work with like it because it's their branding. They paid money for the branding. They paid money for those colors. If you're using a branding expert, they pay a lot of money to get those colors that are different than everyone else in the local area.
Right.
So you want to make sure that you're doing that. But again, having images of the vans, images of people with logoed shirts lends the credibility. Okay, this is a real company.
So these are when people are scrolling through, and your goal is to stop the scroll, as you say. These are static images versus videos. Just to be clear.
Yes,
images.
Because we found just their images. Instead of videos don't get as much conversion on Facebook and Instagram as the static images do. You would think the videos would, but it just because today, whenever most people watch videos with the sound off, right? They're scrolling through Facebook and they don't really, so it's kind of tough. And it's better to be the static image that says everything at once. They can make the decision if they want to click on opening the rest of it, because the magic on the ad is to get them intrigued enough that they click the headline to open the rest of the ad. Because with a Facebook ad, you have the image, and then you have the job copy, we call it, the copy that you want them to read.
Right.
So it's got to be intriguing enough to get them to click on opening the rest of it to make the determination if they want to click on learn more and apply.
So besides the image, are there graphic design elements? Is there copy, sort of nice, bright, bold font copy? Like what are you, besides, photos of workers in uniforms and their wrapped vehicle, what is overlaid on top of that to really captivate and motivate someone to read more?
Right. So the first thing is salary range. You want to put a salary range on there because it gets 70% more applications than an ad without a salary range. Then second is if you have benefits, obviously put that on there. But then what are the intangibles that you have that would get their attention? Of course, a sign-on bonus is always big. You put a big sign-on bonus on there. But do they have vehicles they can take home, gas card? Are they able to dispatch from home? Or possibly do you have no on-call? Those are things that are not necessarily monetary, but are lifestyle benefits. It gives them, if they can dispatch from home, they can start their day at home and end their day at home instead of driving 30 minutes to the shop and 30 minutes back. So those are things that gets people's attention because it is different, and it's a more open-minded way of thinking about giving the culture fit for the employee.
You hear a lot of the time, like with respect to hiring, some people, I wouldn't consider myself one of these people, but some people just feel like this is ultimately like a race for dollars, and it's basically you're in a bidding war trying to outbid your competition. You're saying that some of these intangibles matter as much or more, things like the ability to dispatch from home, which, seems like kind of a minor thing, but you put yourself in the shoes of a technician. That's like every single day. Like it's a little perk that would matter. Other lifestyle elements, flexible hours, you mentioned salary benefits, like these intangible things really add up, and you think that's an important part of this, hey?
Right. I mean, there's things that have made a difference, it's like fully stocked break room. I mean, I feel like for CSRs that have to go into the office, those kind of things that most people don't think about. They think pay and benefits is always important, but these days most everybody has good pay and good benefits.
Right.
So I'm talking about like medical, dental, vision, that kind of thing. And what are the other things that are going to that set you apart from the competition? The same way that you want to set yourself apart from the competition when you're advertising for customers, you want to do the same thing whenever you're advertising for employees.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and it did further answer the question. That was on the images. Then in the actual text of the ads, you want to make sure and use emojis. They seem kind of childish, but it gets people's attention. It gets them to open the rest of the job description and then have spacing between the things, because most people job ads, it's all jammed together and it's hard to read. The space between the bullet points is what makes it easier for people to read. The emojis gets their attention. They can tell what it is without even reading the words, usually with an emoji in there. like for health benefits or the money, for the pay, you put the little money bag in there, or the cash flying away or whatever. You can do those things. It makes it more engaging, and it gets more, like I said, it gets more conversions.
I'm sure that you track this stuff very closely. You're saying the use of emojis is like, there's a noticeable difference in conversions? Really?
A 50% increase in conversion with emojis versus without emojis.
Are there certain emojis that are the best ones? Like what are the top 3 converting emojis?
Right. So the top one for the headline, I mean, we work with HVAC, electrical, plumbing, garage doors, landscaping, you name it. And we've tried, like for HVAC, we figured, the snowflake would work better, right? Because of it's air conditioning. It's cold,
yeah,
and for
totally.
plumbing, the little faucet or the water drops. Now, flames. The little flame emoji is what gets people's attention and gets more conversion than any other emoji in your headline. People have used like the hand waving or the megaphone, the bullhorn. Nope, flames. I mean, to the point that we don't even hardly test it anymore. We still tested it every now and then because you never know when things are going to change. But the flame is what has basically won hands down every time.
Jody, I hope that my girlfriend doesn't hear this episode, because she always complains about my lack of emojis. Like, I'll just send a normal text, like a normal person, just a full sentence, good grammar, proper punctuation. And then later I'll hear that I'm being mean because there's not enough emojis in there. If she hears about this, I'm worried that my case is pretty much full of bullet holes at this point. So emojis work. They convert. You're saying if there's a 50% difference when you use emojis versus not, the spacing really matters so that it's nice and clear and easy to read. Anything else we can say about these attention grabbing ads that stop the scroll, or does that pretty much cover it?
Pretty much, I said it's not a complicated thing. It's just a matter of, like I said, people, logoed shirts, doing work, bands, and emojis in the copy. Now, What you say in the copy also is important. One of the things is you never want to be hiring for we're hiring one HVAC technician, or we're hiring an HVAC technician, because people look at it as, there's only one opening, it's probably already filled. You always want to say you're at least hiring 3 of any position that you're hiring.
That's a really good point.
Even if you're only hiring 1, just saying that you're hiring 3, because then it's, they need more than 1. Maybe I'll have a chance. So the 3 is typically the main number. If you say you need 7, even if you need 7, don't say that, because then it's like, why? But if needing 3, is that sweet spot that we found as well.
That's a really good little tidbit. Okay, so these ads, actually no, there's one other thing I wanted to ask you about, which was the targeting. So when you're using Ads Manager, you're in the back end of Facebook, and you guys do some stuff on Instagram too, I understand. When you're using these platforms, how is the targeting different for an employment ad versus a client-facing, more sales and marketing ad?
Right, completely different. Because when you're sales and marketing, you can put a lot of different filters in. Whenever it comes to recruiting, it's an employment ad. Therefore, it's very strict. You can't discriminate by age. You can't discriminate by gender. You can't really even put many interests. You might have 3 or 4 interests that you could even put in there. And then you only use 1. If you use 2, you're being discriminatory. So basically, you're targeting everyone in a geographic area, because otherwise you're discriminating and they won't let the ads run. So the other part of it is the first box on there when you do the geographic area is people recently in or living in the location. Drop down to the next line, which is only people living in this location. So only people that live in that diameter, because it doesn't do you any good to put an ad in front of somebody that visited 2 months ago.
So when you're advertising for clients on these things, you can be unbelievably specific, sometimes to kind of a creepy extent, where it's like, I'm looking for men at this age who have these interests, who play at these golf courses, who buy this type of truck, and live in this postal code. It's like very, very targeted. You don't actually have that at your disposal when you're using an employment ad, because there's rules around what we would consider discriminatory hiring practices. So that's a very important little data point for someone who's maybe new at this and considering it. The targeting is vastly different, and that's why Jody really is a pro on all this. Just before we move on to the application page, I'll just remind listeners, if you want a visual, there's 3 example ads that are just will give you a really nice kind of overview of what we just discussed in that download that Jody's provided. So check that out, download it, have a look. It will really bring this whole idea to life. Let's talk about the application page, which the ads push the job applicant to. What are those about?
So there again, it's going to sound like a broken record. It's about the branding. It's about the colors, the logos, everything looking as similar as possible to your website, to your Facebook page, to the ad. Again, if it's different, that's a scam.
Right.
So you want to make sure that you want to have a great banner for the page. And this is where video does work. Having a video about your company, the lifestyle, the culture, testimonials from employees, why they work for you on that page, and that automatically plays as soon as they go there. So then, because now they will listen, they've taken enough of an interest that now they've come to the page. They'll usually take the time to watch the video and listen to it. And then, but right below that is the application on one side of the page and the job description on the other side of the page, so that they don't have to leave and go anywhere to ask any questions about the job or go back to a page. Mm-hmm. Because it's just like a funnel. In a sales funnel, you only want them to do one thing, and that is click the buy button. Mm-hmm. Here, we only want them to do one thing: fill out the application and click submit. Now, the big difference in what I see with what we do and what most companies do is on any home service website out, not just home services, anybody that's hiring, anybody who has a career page, usually it's looking for their first name, last name, their email, their phone number, and upload a resume. Well, the majority of people in home services that are technicians, installers, don't necessarily have one laying around ready to upload. Mm-hmm. You can ask all the questions on the application page. They actually give you more information than you would typically get from a resume. And then where we're different is at the bottom, we have it so they can upload a resume if available. We find about 70% of the applications we get do not have a resume attached. Right. So you're broadening you're broadening the scope by going on social media, getting people that aren't necessarily going to job boards, and now you're broadening it again by allowing them to apply without having to have a resume to upload. Yeah. And so, like I said, 70% is a big number.
That's a huge number. So only 30% are deciding to upload a resume, and the remainder are just doing the form, and that's good enough. Jody, at the beginning of our conversation here, you talked about the importance of really communicating and visualizing the career path. Nobody applies to a dead-end job, or not nobody, but the people you want certainly don't. So how do you use video to communicate that effectively and show, you might start here, but then you move here, and with this training you move here, and this increase in pay, and you're really laying out a path that they feel they can grow into?
Right. So that's where the testimonials from the employees who are working for you, who have gone through that path, comes into play. Because rather than you explaining it, which is a little biased.
It's like, of course you're going to say
biased.
that.
It's biased, and they say self-promotion is of little value, and it's also a little technical as far as your explanation. Whenever you have an employee going, I started here a couple of years ago. I came in at entry level, and by learning the tools, getting all the training to allow me to be successful, I'm now making in excess of $100,000 every year. I've never made that kind of money before for getting a job in the trades. Yeah. So them talking about the experience that they've gone through does more selling it than you trying to tell them about it as a business owner.
Going back to the form for a second, besides like their baseline information, I don't know if you said this already, like, what are the more like qualitative things you're asking for? I'm sure there's some boxes that they check, some drop-down menus that they select from. Is there any, are there text fields that they fill out where they're kind of providing you with more information about them?
Sure. Depending on the position, like for instance, HVAC. A lot of companies, they only want to hire somebody if they already have their EPA certificate. So having them put their EPA certificate number in there, having them input who their last two employers are, putting that information in. Some states, we can't do it in every state, and we'd be putting in there, asking them questions about their motor vehicle report. Because number one, before you can hire them, it's not going to do any good to hire a technician who is not insurable.
Right.
That's going to be driving your trucks. You're going to be driving your vans. So you want to ask them about their motor vehicle report, and telling them there's anything that we should be aware of. Also, you can let them know that we drug test. Is there anything you'd like us to know before that happens? Those kind of things, which basically help you with the script with that. Now, in some states where we're allowed to do it, we actually go in there. Have you had any of these violations? Hit and run, speeding more than 15 miles over the speed limit, reckless driving, DUI. We can ask those questions. Some places like California, we can't. But then we ask them, is there anything on your motor vehicle report we should be aware of before moving forward?
So the form gets completed. What is the next step? That video interview that you were talking about? How does that work?
So as soon as they complete the application, it's just like a redirect when somebody clicks the buy button, right? And they redirect over to the next sales page. Mm-hmm. In this case, it's a funnel. We're moving them to the next step in the funnel, which is the video interview. And so there's a video of the owner. They only have to do it one time going, hey, this is Jim with Jim Smith Home Services. We've got your application. We're so excited that you're interested in a position here. The next step in the process is a simple, short 3 to 4 question video interview. You can use your iPhone, your Android. Make sure you have a good lighting, dress for success, and have fun answering the questions. We'll see you on the other side. And then the first question we typically ask is, what's your favorite sport and what drives you to win? Because that's a softball question. Anybody can answer that very easily. Then it's like, what's your level of expertise with HVAC, with plumbing, with painting, with whatever it is. And then we get more to tell us about a time that you had an unhappy customer. Then when you went on the call, you explained the situation and they were unhappy. How did you handle it? Mm-hmm. So that you also, the other thing is you are able to see what they look like, mm-hmm. see how they communicate, mm-hmm. because today technicians have to not only be able to diagnose and repair, they also have to be able to sell.
Totally.
Right? They have to be able to sell the best solution for the situation that they have found. And with performance pay, it even becomes more and more critical for their success for what they're going to be paid. So you're able to see, do they communicate? And you also get to see things that you might not expect, like people who don't get out of bed to do the video interview, or somebody who's driving. Or my favorite one, the guy in Las Vegas, logoed shirt on, answers the first question, second question rolls around. He's tapping, doesn't realize the camera's on, picks up a one-hitter pipe and goes... And then, so it's like, people are like, well, it's Las Vegas, marijuana is legal. I'm like, so is Jack Daniels, but you don't do shots during an interview. But you never know what you're going to see whenever you do that. And it just gives you that next level. Back to like Miles said, with having social media, that's the job fair where you're the only booth. Having the video interview, it's like seeing them walk into the booth and you can hit the eject button before you ever have to talk to them.
Well, I think what's interesting, the idea of a phone interview, or we would call it like an interview setup call. We've talked about this at length in other episodes, like how to do those well. It's still a great practice to have. I mean, but what you're talking about is like the way technology has evolved over the last few years. This allows you to do two things that you couldn't before. Number one, it's automated. So these questions are canned, right? They are just sort of the same for everyone. They're asked to answer the questions into a camera using the smartphone, which we can make the case most people own. Yeah. So it's automated. It's very hands off. The second thing is it adds a visual component to this that isn't there on the phone interview. And I would consider myself a pretty good judge of character. I have been, I've been, let's say, interview catfished before, where you're like, okay, this is maybe not, I thought this sounded better over the phone. This maybe, instrumental isn't there. Confidence, articulation, like vocabulary, the way that they present themselves isn't the way that they maybe sounded on the phone. This video component, the visual component added to this, can certainly save a lot of those surprises later on in the funnel. So I love that idea of a video interview. So that basically gets pushed to them after the form gets completed. What percentage do you track the conversion from like form complete to video interview complete? Is that pretty high success rate or what?
If they've taken the time to complete the application, over half of them will do the video interview.
That's pretty good.
I mean, not everybody will, because you're gonna have technicians, whatever, that don't feel comfortable, and they'll respond back, because we put them into a nurture sequence again because they don't always fill it out. They don't always go do it immediately. So we send them in the next day. Hey, we're just waiting for lights, camera, action. It's time for your video interview, in order to get them to go do it. But we'll have people that respond to the text go, I don't really feel comfortable on camera. Is there any way that I can talk to someone? So they'll respond. So we still, just because only half of them do it doesn't mean only half of people get hired. Some people don't feel comfortable, but it does give you that next step in the process of the 50% that will do it. And then the other ones that don't, you kind of have to go back to the old school.
If someone, so you do allow for that. If someone says, "Hey, like I'm kind of camera shy," which is understandable, and they sort of initiate the conversation. They reply to one of your automated emails and say, "I don't want to do this sort of selfie video. Can we talk on the phone?" That you will allow for that. That's totally doable. And okay, cool, really good to know. So you're capturing 50% right off the hop on that video interview, and then some other percentage. I'm assuming manually over the phone, and then there's some that you slip like in any funnel. Let's talk. You mentioned it a second ago. Let's talk a little bit about the nurture sequence and automations and the things you do after this to really prompt people to take the next step and move forward.
So just like you would nurture a lead that comes through for being a customer, if they don't answer the phone or don't respond to the first email, you don't stop, right? You continue to send them more stuff. The same thing here. Whenever they click on apply or learn more, a lot of times they're not ready to fill the information in right then. Most of the time they're not ready to fill it in right then. So we put them into the nurture sequence, sending them every day we're sending them a text message and an email. Every other day we're sending them a voice drop, meaning a ringless voicemail. The reason we feel like, why do you do that? And why don't you call them? Because most people don't answer the phone on the first time they get it anyway. So we just might as well go ahead and make it a voicemail that drops in there. But every day they're getting a message of some form, email, text, or voice drop to take the next step. And we make the message different each day. It's the first day is, hey, we got your information from our employee campaign. If you have this requirement, remember it's $85,000 to $100,000 a year. Go ahead and officially apply. The next day we send one, hey, not sure if you saw this, but we still have a position open for HVAC installer. And with this benefit, go ahead and officially apply. And then we get down to like day 4 or so, and we send them a picture of a dog or a cat or a goldfish, some kind of mascot. And going, hey, this is our mascot, Cooper. Every time someone completes an application, Cooper gets a treat. So go ahead and complete the application. Cooper's counting on you. So continuing to do that, moving people through the process. The other thing is there's going to be a lot of people that fill out the information the first step, but don't ever take the second step. And that's just how it is. I mean, that's how it is with Facebook with customers as well. So the more messages you put in front of them, the more likelihood of them through that process. And then if after like 2 weeks we haven't heard from them, we'll send one last one out going, hey, a couple of weeks ago you said you were interested. If you are, go ahead and respond one word, interested. Then as soon as they do the application, then we put them in the same kind of sequence for doing the video interview. The lights, camera, action, or it's time for your big debut, those kind of things. So
there's a lot of prompts and reminders here. Any insight on text versus email and like the open rates and effectiveness of those two mediums?
95% of our communications are through text.
Not email.
Because if you think about it, not email, text. Because think about text versus email. Email, if we were doing right now, I would have to go open my email, look at it, read the email. Since we've been on here, I've received text messages on my phone that I was able to glance over and see and know what the text message was, right? It's how we communicate today. It's easy and the text message always shows up on the top of the phone. They have to go open their email and look for the email to be able to read it. The text message, it pops up. Just like here, if you like my phone, right? Stuff has popped up here since we've been talking. I have to see it. Right. I can't ignore it. I mean, I can, but I can't not see it. So text message is 95% of the communication.
Wow, that's really compelling. Yeah, it's really, really good, man. So here's a question, Jody. I bet you someone's listening to this right now and they're like, and you must have to deal with this objection all the time where it's like, well, yeah, we're going to text. It's so informal that you're making it so easy. Like this has got to be harder. I don't want to make this so low friction. Like we have standards around here, Jody. Is that a dated mindset? How do you handle that? Like, how do you handle that kind of pushback from clients or prospects when people are checking out Rapidhire? Like, what's going on there?
Sure. So yes, it is like I said, look at the whole title of what we're talking about. Reducing friction in the funnel, right? We got to make it easier for them to do that. Treating them like we do marketing for them, like we market for customers. Now, that being said, with a customer, once you go out there, if they don't meet certain criteria, they're not really going to be an ideal customer for you. Right. So, for instance, if you're doing solar water heaters, if they don't own their own home, you're not really going to be interested in having a conversation with them because they're not going to. And if they don't heat their water with electric or whatever it needs for the incentives, you're able to qualify. You want as many leads as possible, and then you qualify them. The same thing here. The leads come in, then the application is the first step of qualification, and then the video interview is the next step. Because between those two, you're going to weed out the ones that you don't want to talk to, and the ones that you want to talk to, you just simply send them a text message that says, hey, thank you so much. We received your information, but it's not a fit for us right now. And that part's automated. So you bring more in the top of the funnel, but you wind up with a better quality applicant towards the end because you're able to basically go through and qualify them with the information you're receiving.
So where in the process is the first manual touch point for the hiring manager or the business owner or the clients that you work with? Like how far along is someone, and what information are they picking up and working with, and when does that happen at like as we just look at this funnel as a whole?
Sure. So the first time they get involved is once we have an application. And so our account manager is communicating with each one of our clients every day. There's how many leads came in. Here's 2 new applications we have, because we don't make them wait. Because some people are like so hot for employees that they don't want to wait for the video interview. It's like, here's somebody, if you want to go ahead and look at them, if you want to schedule an interview. Others wait until they have the application and the video interview, but that's when they get involved. They have basically about 15 minutes a day is the interaction that any of our clients have with our account managers, looking at the determination of if that's something that someone they want to move through the process. Yeah. Now, the more people work with inside of our system, the better it works for them. But then there are those that are just completely hands off and say, bring me the application, bring me the video interview, and then I'll look at it.
Yeah.
And those are a little bit slower.
It's so cool, man. This whole thing is just, it's so, I love this whole process. I love that you're doing this for this space. It's, as you know, you can talk about your growth with Rapidhire here in a second, but I think that you've really struck a nerve here in the market, because I've said this in another podcast, when we look at this team building challenge that a lot of business owners are working with, I feel that like 90% of it is top of funnel. It's like we can teach you interviewing skills and how to select and how to onboard and how to do an expectations meeting and all that stuff. But if you have an empty inbox and you have no one to choose from in the first place, you're always going to make a bad hire. So I just feel really passionate about fixing this issue, and I think this is one approach that's working. On that note, do you have any like just really good success stories, highlights, testimonials, results you can speak to with some of the many clients you've worked with over the last little while?
Sure. So we have like 10 or 12 testimonials on our website. Granted, keep in mind that we didn't start this with other than one company until October of 21. So basically looking at 7 or 8 months, and that 7 or 8 months going from one client to over 75 clients. So what we're doing is working, or that wouldn't have happened. But with the success stories, or people like I mentioned earlier, like Miles with Naiad Irrigation, he was looking for entry-level people. It was very important for him to move quickly, because there's only a certain window for being able to put in the irrigation systems in Calgary. So he said, I got to hire in a short period of time. So he was able to hire about 12 people in 60 days. We've had other success stories like AM Heat and Cool. They're in Tucson, Arizona, and they've come in the first 30 days, hired 4 experienced technicians. So there's those that happen very quickly. Then there are some that I look at as it was like, oh my goodness, this one doesn't seem so great. Is a company in Colorado, very small company, not small company, they're a big company, but they're in a very limited area population wise. And it took them about 6 months to hire 3 experienced plumbers, but they were ecstatic because they hadn't hired 3 experienced plumbers in a year, much less in 4 months in the history of the company. So all of those types of things. And basically one thing that I look at and I talk about a lot is Justin with Daffy Ducks. It really is the name of a company. He said that it's a duck cleaning company. I think it's a great name. But he said that basically it's given his person who was doing recruiting, the majority of the recruiting before, at least 2 hours a day back into their life because of having the automations and things in place that they don't have to worry about because they're being taken care of for them.
It's so good. And, I really appreciate you sharing all this stuff. You know, one thing we didn't, a couple of things here as we come to a close. You know, we've been talking here for the last 50 minutes, literally just about this top of funnel stuff. If you want to learn more about interviewing, go check out that Ultimate Hiring Funnel series. Episode 5 specifically with James Alish is a really good one. We go deep on how to actually do, the next step of the process, which we didn't have time for today, because I just wanted to go deep on some of this top of funnel stuff. Jody, you know, one thing I really appreciate about you is how transparent you are, and you just like, what drives me crazy is when people are like, I don't want to share my industry secrets. I don't want to share my guru knowledge. It's too valuable. I'm always like, okay, whatever, man. You just literally completely pulled back the kimono and showed us the whole process, and it means a lot and it's super helpful. There's enough here that if a listener wanted to go and build this themselves, they probably could, but I know small business owners, they're likely too busy that I think there's a good chance they may not. And if somebody wanted to connect with you, because you guys do all of this for clients, it's almost completely automated. Where would somebody reach out and find out more about Rapidhire and connect with you or your team?
Sure. So our website is rapidhirepro.com. Whenever you go there, you'll see on the page, you'll see a lot of the companies we work with, the testimonials that are there. And several places on the page, there's a big green button. Our colors obviously are green and blue. There's a big green button that says schedule. And that's where you can go schedule a call. It will be with me. It's not a sales call. It's basically for me to understand a little bit about your business and then to share some of the recommendations that we've talked about here, but to show you the actual examples of those recommendations. And again, I record that call for people as well, Benji. So as I tell them, look, I'm going to record the call. I'm going to send it to you because you're going to need to share it with your team, possibly to make the decision. And if it's something you choose to do, great. And if not, hopefully there's things here that you can implement for yourself if you choose that we're not the right fit. Because I find the more I give, the luckier I get. So I provide that for every person who gets the recording. And even I had one guy that came back, wanted a discount. I was like, we don't do that. And it was like, well, I've got somebody else that does it cheaper. I'm like, that's awesome. You should share this with that person. Maybe they can implement some of those things for you. Because it is. Lisa, my job is to share the information. If it's something that looks good, fine. If it's not, hey, I hope you got some value.
Totally. We are very aligned on that front. Guys, if you're listening to this and you're feeling the pinch when it comes to team building, go check out Jody and Rapidhire. What they're doing here is very, very cool. It's a very fresh take on recruiting that this industry needs. I highly recommend you go check them out. Jody, thank you for being here, man. You've said it all. We'll have to have you back in the future. It's been a ton of fun.
Absolutely. Same here, Benji. It's been a pleasure. Look forward to it, man.
Thanks so much for watching this episode of Contractor Evolution. If you've already subscribed to our channel, consider sharing this episode with another contractor who you think needs to hear it.